Welcome to the Action Lab Leadership Podcast, the show where we have honest, unfiltered conversations with business leaders. I'm Danny, founder of Action Lab Leadership, and today I'm joined by my friend Jeremy Hoyum, who is an industry veteran. He is an urban air franchisee, a coach, among many other things that you do. Welcome to the show, Jeremy.
Thank you for having me.
I want to start where I always do, the word leadership. It's a big word, means a lot of things to a lot of people. What does leadership mean to you, and what does it mean to be a leader in an organization?
Well, first, both you and I are Maxwell junkies, right? And so he says that it's influence, nothing more, nothing less, right? And I kind of explain it from the point of view of most people speak management, leadership, and they kind of keep them completely separate. Management's managing tasks and things like that. Leaders have to have management skills, but I teach that leadership is getting results through other people.
It's interesting, and this may have come from Maxwell. I don't remember exactly where I've heard it, but one of the differences between management and leadership that I've heard is that management is maintaining a current status quo and leadership is taking you somewhere new.
Correct. I mean, from a leader's responsibility is to get the most out of their team, right? And there's two ways of doing that. There's a way where you're doing it selfishly, and you're not taking advantage of necessarily, but that does exist. And then there's the side where you truly care about the future of the person and wanting them to be the best version of themselves, or your team to be the best version of them. And you need to kind of be the catalyst to give them the tools and the guidance to get to whatever that level could be.
How do you become the catalyst in the businesses that you know?
I think that it starts with, people will roll their eyes at the back of their head when I talk about it. Core values, purpose, that's the foundation for culture. That's where it truly starts. And then from there, it's actually genuinely caring about people, understanding that everybody has value that's innate, like everybody deserves to be treated with value. And then from there, it's every relationship in life, whether it's business or personal, you're either depositing equity into somebody or you're withdrawing from them. And it's important for leaders to continuously deposit into the people that are in their circles, because there's going to be hard times where you have to do big withdrawals. And if you haven't put the equity into it, then negative things happen. When they're empty and you're still trying to pull out of it.
You mentioned right there at the very beginning that people will roll their eyes when I say core values, those sorts of things. I think part of the reason that people roll their eyes is a lot of people view the core values as, well, that's just some box I'm supposed to check when I start a business. If I have these things written on a piece of paper, put on the website. But the core values are supposed to be much more than that. They're supposed to be integrated into everything that you do, everything that you say, every decision that you make, and repeat it to your team on a regular basis, that anyone on your team can repeat back to you, what are the core values? How do they show up in what we do? And I think too often it's just treated as, well, that's just some weird thing I'm supposed to do. And so I'll either do it begrudgingly and roll my eyes, or I'm just not going to do it at all and I'll just provide.
I think that people don't understand the power of operating in that every day and the extreme results that come from operating in that every day, either because they haven't truly identified what their core values are. But even identifying it, that's just half the battle. Holding people accountable to living and existing within the alignment of those values takes work, and it takes discipline to do that. Most people, when you're talking about when it's listed up on the wall, those aren't really their core values. Those are aspirational values where they're like, I would like for you to be like that, but we're typically not going to hold you accountable to that.
And what are your core values?
So business and personal, like they intertwine, right? But it can be a little bit different. So like, I'll give you an example at Urban Air. I help create the values where we have 5 of them specifically, and language matters. Like, it's important, and I'll talk about that in a second, but it's important that everybody is in the same page, and the way that you do that is requiring the language to be set the same way. So that because whatever the difference is in how I say it, how somebody else says it, could have a different interpretation, and that gap in the middle is where the gray area happens, and there's a misalignment, or there's a possibility for misalignment. And so for at Urban Air, it's we put safety above all else. We're obsessed with great guest service. We assume the best and choose not to be offended. It's a very powerful one. We finish all things through to completion. And then the first four are all we, and it's we on purpose because 90% of what we do is as a team. And the last one is I, and it's I on purpose because it's a personal decision that you have to make every day, and it's I'm determined to be exceptional. I want winners on my team who get up and want to win the day, knowing there are going to be days that we don't lose, that we lose, and we have to get up tomorrow and want to win again.
One of the that you mentioned there was I said I assume.
We assume the best and choose not to be offended.
It reminds me of the idea of assuming positive intent. Whether it's with a customer, client, someone in the organization, it's so easy as human beings when something is done in a way that we don't expect, or something is done in a way that we consider wrong, is that we assume at times that someone did it on purpose, or they're just trying to screw things up, or whatever the case may be. But a lot of times it's either through ignorance because they didn't realize the right way to do it, or it's because something changed and they made the best decision with the information and the circumstances they had, that once you learn that, you go, oh, I actually would have done the same thing. But then we create all these negative stories in our heads because if we jump to the conclusions of, well, they're just screwing this up, and then we dive in and go, oh, never mind, they did it right. But then we've created so much friction in ourselves, and then we've kind of put a wall up between us and that other person.
Right. And there's so much depth to that core value because it touches so many different things. And because there are times where those intentions were negative, but how you choose to handle that. So I give a bunch of different examples. And when I teach about that core value specifically, let's say I have a room of 100 kids that we're opening a new facility or something like that. I say, raise your hand if you've ever said anything stupid or done anything stupid in your life, right? And always there's some knucklehead who's trying to be funny who does the opposite, right? But obviously we've all needed grace at some point in our life. Who are we not to give it to somebody else when you meet, right? And so when you combine that with the purpose of truly understanding in our family entertainment industry what we do and why it's important, we're not just people who make pizzas or run birthday parties or cashiers or anything like that. We provide a valuable service to our communities. And we have so many negative things out there. And I personally believe that 90% of our problems as a country here in the U.S. Have to do with the fact that our families are broken. And we provide a place where families can come and connect, celebrate, escape the hardships of life, right? And so when I'm teaching that with a purpose, because you have to have core values and you have to couple it with purpose, the why behind what you do. And when you do that, magic happens. And so I teach them, let's say we have 100,000 people that come through our facility in a year, and 1% of the population doesn't know how to behave in public. That's still 1,000 people over the course of 365 days that you have to deal with that are just awful people. And so the way I explain it is that everybody that comes into our doors, every guest that clocks, or every team member that clocks in, they've all got a story. We just don't know what it is. That lady that's screaming at us and we're like, why are you in here? You don't even want to have fun. Her dad might have died 2 weeks ago and she's venting in the only way that she knows how. Does that make it appropriate? Absolutely not. And sometimes leaders have to cross the line of, exiting some people like that from the building. But if we just operate from the place of understanding that everybody's got a story, what we can do is one of the most powerful things in the world, which is give somebody a smile that they don't deserve.
It's also hard to do that at a time.
Absolutely. It's a learned skill, yes. Right? But we have to teach our team. So just listing the core values is not enough, right? We have to be able to articulate what it looks like and what it doesn't look like in every aspect of our jobs, and then use that language. You mentioned it right. Use it every day, but use it in the language from everything that we do, from interviewing to hiring to onboarding to training to coaching to disciplining to promoting to firing. Every single thing that we do every day, when we're seeing positive behavior that aligns with the values, we need to use the language of, hey, when you did that, that shows me you're obsessed with great guest service. I want more of that, right? Or on the opposite of, hey, when you didn't do that, that shows me you're not obsessed with great guest service. What are we going to do to fix that?
You talked about when core values meet the vision and the why. that's when magic happens.
Correct.
And in an organization, let's just say franchise like Urban Air, everyone has the same core values because that's brand wide. But every individual franchise owner is going to have their own version of their why and the reason they got in the business. What is your purpose, your vision, your why, whatever word you want to drop in there for that business?
So I mentioned we provide a safe place for families to come connect, celebrate the wins of life, grow big and small, and escape the hardships. And I tell this, I explain this through a story. So one time, a long time ago, when I was a young manager, I was a young dumb manager, I'll put it that way. And I had way less gray hair than I do now. It was like a Sunday afternoon. I was walking through the facility, just checking on things. And it was one of those Sundays that was kind of like busy enough to be annoying, but not busy enough to make the day fly by. And this lady walks up to me and she says, "Hey, I just want to say thank you because your staff were so great with my kids." And me being the young, dumb manager that I was just went through the motions of, "Thank you so much for sharing that information with us. We truly appreciate your feedback." Just a robot, right? And she stopped me in my tracks and she's like, "No, you don't understand. I'm dying of cancer and this is the last time I'm going to be able to do this with our kids."
No.
And I was straight out of the military. I thought I was tough. It was a punch to the gut and I was tearing up. And this was almost 15, 20 years ago now. And I still tear up when I tell that story. In the moment, I thought to myself, I was proud that my staff did the right thing, not knowing what was going on. But later on, I thought to myself, how much more powerful would it be if our staff did know that? Now, obviously, there's no way we can know everybody's story that comes into the building, but we can teach our teams to respond and interact with our guests and each other with the understanding that everybody's got a story. We just don't know what it is. And when you do that, that's how you change the world one person at a time.
Right. And knowing and remembering that also makes the stressful, chaotic, sometimes disasters of a day easier to manage and mentally process, and to your point, worth it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I tell people when I'm hiring for leadership, you have to be kind of crazy to be in this business. Who wants to work nights, weekends, holidays? Who wants to deal with the volume of those difficult guests? I mean, how many businesses do you go to where you've had a cash register thrown at you? You've been spit on. I've been spit on probably 12 times over the course of my career, which is 30 years. But just craziness of the things, the emotion, the up and down, the fires you got to put out every day. If you don't truly have a servant's heart and want to help people and buy into the mentoring of the young people that we get the opportunity to do every single day and impact their lives of the team members that we have, and truly want to help those families that are coming in, it's not going to be worth it too.
Well, you have the perspective today of knowing that those difficult days are worth it because of the impact that you made. Did you always have that perspective in your career, or were there points in the past where that stress became too much? That stress is difficult to compartmentalize and you got burned out, and you didn't have the way of processing those days and those weeks or seasons even at times?
For sure. I mean, everybody has seasons where external factors add to the flame of that pressure that you're dealing with. And even internal pressures. I've worked in toxic environments where it was team me versus team somebody else. And when you get caught up in that and you forget about the purpose and you're not talking about the purpose or the why of what we do, that's when that pressure affects you, right? So like, I used to be in the military, and this is a great industry for veterans. I'm just putting that out there. But when you deal with chaos and the uncertainty to the level that we did in the military, in the civilian world, it's not as bad, right? We have a higher tolerance or threshold than most people. But with that being said, everybody's human. And if you don't have that focus, or you don't have some type of system to get you back into continuously talking, that's why the daily language matters, continuously talking about why we do what we do, you just get caught in the day-to-day, and that stress gets bigger and bigger. And then at some point you do or say something that you would not normally do, and you regret it. And that saying, if you can't unring a bell, you have to potentially damage control the relationships that you mess up because of that.
Speaking of messing up, let's talk about failure for a moment. We've all all had many, many mistakes, many failures, and we'll continue to have them. That's part of life, about part of growth. If we're never failing, we're not trying anything new. When you look back at your entrepreneurship journey, your career, what failure or mistake are you most grateful for? The one that in the moment it hurt, it sucked. But on the other side of it, now that you've learned from that, you can reflect on it and realize that helped me become a better version of me. That helped me grow. That helped me become a better leader. And I'm grateful for having that experience.
Well, one thing is I'm grateful that at a pretty young age, I identified that going through the fire is a positive thing. Like, I wouldn't change one bad thing that's ever happened to me in my past because it's brought me right where I'm supposed to be today. There's a couple examples that I'll give you of failure that I'm very grateful to a leader that I had who helped me learn lessons. When I was young, I was an aggressive, and especially coming from the military, there's a very aggressive form of leadership that's your motto, right? So when I got out, it took me a while to adjust to a different level and understand how to get more impact and results from people by adjusting my leadership style. So I'll give you the example of back when we had first opened Amazing Shakes. It's crazy, the few doctors at the time. And there was a maintenance person who was responsible for the go-karts. The batteries were always dying, and he just couldn't seem to get it done to get the batteries operational. And we're on the operation side dealing with the upset guests from an hour and a half wait, all the negativity that came with that. And so I took it upon myself to solve the problem by myself very quickly. And I went to the VP at the time, pulled me into his office and gave me that very sarcastic, good job. And I was like, what happened? And he's like, I need you to think about this. He's like, yeah, you solved the problem, but I need you to turn around and look at the wake you left behind you of the people that you bull rushed through, that you're going to depend on them following you in the future. Because I wasn't the GM yet. I was a assistant manager at the time. And you're going to depend on them following you in the future. Think of the impact that this one moment could have in your ability to get them to buy into your vision in the future. And that has stuck with me forever. And from that, it kind of, matured into the difference between having to be right all the time. Because I'm blessed in that I think about things in a different way than most people. And a lot of the times I am right. But is it more important to be right? Or is it more important to help somebody else understand the path to get to the right answer, or to allow them to fail through their own thought process in order to grow? Like, I've had the opportunity to grow.
It makes me think about the idea of, and I use this example many times in presentations and even here on the podcast in a recent episode, of the difference between, we think of the metaphor of a math teacher, and I'm a student. I go up to the teacher. They know the answer to the equation that I'm looking at. I don't know how to solve it. And I say, what's the answer to this? And they say, oh, it's 75. I go, okay, got it. And I write it in. I have the answer, but I have no idea how to get there. I have no idea what the kind of mental problem solving was that went into it. And to your point is, you might be the teacher of, I know the answer, but we also have to be patient enough, and it's hard to do at times, be patient enough to guide another person through understanding how we think about solving problems so that they can do it on their own in the future.
Well, problem solving is a lost skill set in the younger generation right now anyway. So we have to teach that from the get-go. I used this example in one of my talks the other day about, I asked them to raise their hand if they're old enough to remember what the Dewey Decimal System was. And I'm guessing you might not be. Okay. So, and if you just think about that process, where when we had to do a book report or something like that, we had to go to the library, we had to take this big drawer of cards out and fumble through it, find the book that we wanted to do the report. Then we had to go and hope that the library's assistant put the book in the right place. When we find the book, we had to open up the book and we actually had to read it because there was no search function back there. And then hopefully we had what we needed to do our report. So just a simple process like that, you were required to problem solve every day. And the younger generation right now has a supercomputer in their hands that they can just Google an answer to something. And so they've never had to learn the skill of do this, do this, do this. If this doesn't work, pivot and do this. And so we have to teach them how to do that. And so it took me a long time to learn that process of learning can be way more important than the actual end result. The problem is we have to balance the need for the end result with business and the urgency of that need dependent on what the situation is with the giving them the time and the space to learn.
It can be too easy right now with the advent of AI to outsource critical thinking. And AI today is the worst it will ever be. It's only going to continue getting better. And I use AI in a lot of those tools, but I also think about the underlying critical thinking that goes into, hey, I have this problem of these disparate things that I'm trying to solve right now. If I just always dump everything into a system to blurt out some answer to me, I'm losing a little bit of the art of solving problems on my own. And while I love tools and AI and all these different things, I think we need to be aware of when to use them and when not, so that we don't lose some of the part of being human and solving problems on our own.
I agree. And you've said the word a couple of times, it's a tool. We need to teach that it's a tool. I mean, and honestly, to get the best out of AI, you have to use critical thinking to give the correct prompts that in order to get the result that you want at the end. And that's going to probably get easier as time goes as well. But we have to figure out, because that skill set is not going to go away. And honestly, that's going to be who the valuable employee is in the future, or team member in the future, is the person who has owned that skill set, because AI is not going to be able to solve all of our problems. AI cannot make a birthday moth happy in the middle of a birthday party. We have to have the emotional intelligence to understand something might not be right. We have to think about what are our tools that we can use. We have to coach our team and to make sure it doesn't happen again. All of those skill sets need to be combined at one time into a real life situation. That's not going to be solved by AI.
I want to go back to something that you mentioned earlier of you wouldn't change anything difficult thing that happened in your past. And it's something that I think about a lot, is the idea of regret. And I'll talk to people who say, oh, I regret making this decision, or I regret this, or I wish that I would have done this differently. And what I ask them is, do you love your life today? Do you like where you are today? And very often the answer is, yeah, I really enjoy my life. And I say, then don't regret anything. Because had any of small, tiny moment in the past changed, your life as it exists now would be entirely different. Mm-hmm. Well, you don't know in what ways it would be different. It's impossible to know. But I think about that a lot. It's one thing to learn from something that I might describe as a mistake, learn from something I might describe as a failure or decision that I made that was maybe the quote wrong decision, although I don't know if there's such thing as right and wrong always. But it's another thing to fully regret it. And I think learning from those things and improving in the future is a healthier way for me to approach life than regretting the past.
Well, I think that there is a place where if you don't learn from what you did and you can continue to do it, that's just foolishness, right? It's a lack of wisdom. But I had the opportunity to speak to those 300 foster kids in Arizona a couple of years ago. And while I was talking, had a video going on in the background. And I was talking to these kids to help them understand that the world's going to tell them that they're victims, and they are victims of a circumstance, right? But I talk to them and say, I think you actually have an advantage over most people because you've been through the fire at a young age. And so while I'm teaching this video's in the back, and there's a blacksmith takes a nasty, dirty old pipe wrench and he puts it in the fire. And then he takes it out and he beats on it. And he puts it in the fire and he takes it out and he beats on it, right? And at the end of the presentation, what they see is there was an old dirty pipe wrench, and now there's a beautiful knife that is a tool that can be used and has many functions. And that is no longer something that could be just discarded, right? And in order for that to have happened, the metal had to be put into the fire, and then it had to get out and then be pounded, right? And that pounding represents the work we do when we've been in the fire. If he had just taken the metal out and put it back in, and to taking the metal out, put it back in, At the end, all you have is a burnt piece of metal. And so what you do with an actor and through being in the fire, because a lot of times they put them in the fire, they take them out, it's still hot, and then they put it back in the fire. What you do with that is going to determine the future of what your potential is to be used, and hopefully to add value to the world.
If pounding on it is the work that you do after you've been in the fire, what is the pounding that you do? What is the work that you do when you are going through difficult circumstances, when there's challenging things in life and business, in order for you to grow from that, to get better, and to learn from those things?
So it's first it starts with reflection, right? Where am I at? What happened? Where do I want to be? Those types of questions. For me, and I don't know, maybe different from you, but I'm very faith-based person. And so for me, it's like, what do I need to do? Or one, I believe that I have a path that's set out in front of me where I'm allowed to go through things in order to learn, in order to become more valuable. And because I understand that, I have a different perspective of going through the fire than most people do, or some other people do. And so I don't anticipate or look forward to the fire necessarily, but knowing that what the end result of going through that fire is, it's turned it into being a positive instead of a negative for me.
Let's look toward the future. What is a leadership skill or quality, characteristic, whatever you want to call it, in yourself that you're trying to improve moving forward, that you're trying to grow, that you see as Jeremy, this is not this, I want to be able to improve this area? Maybe you would describe it as a weakness, but what area you're trying to grow right now?
Communication, so much of life depends on, how many times have you been in a situation where there's conflict or tension between two people, and at the end of the day, it was this person thinking we were talking about one thing and this person thinking we were talking about another thing. And so all of the negative emotion and interaction was unnecessary, right? So for me, it's being clear in my expectations or my vision for a team, as clear as I can so that there's no misunderstanding, and communicating in a way where my posture is to make sure I know, or I get feedback from you, that you understand what I'm saying and where I want us to go, and not just assume that because I said the words, it gets you there. Because the sooner that clarity happens, your team wants to be successful. They want you to be successful. If I'm investing in somebody's life, they want me to be successful because it's going to lift them. They're going to come with me during that success cycle. And so the sooner I can create clarity, the sooner I can have the courage to have difficult conversations when difficult conversations need to be had, that creates momentum and results, and everybody's rowing in the same direction. And that's the kind of stuff that's so much fun as a leader and rewarding when you see all that kind of start to happen.
What's interesting is that's a question that I've been asking in every one of my podcast interviews is, what's an area that you're trying to grow right now? And how common it is for people to use communication. It is a very, very common piece among people who are leaders or owners of a business or anybody else, how much of a skill it is that we still need to grow in. And it's funny because I sit across from somebody, we're having a conversation, and during the conversation, someone will be speaking very clearly and communicating well, and I'm understanding all the concepts that they're sharing. And at the same time, they're still saying, I want to communicate more clearly. I need to improve on this. Do you think, and I've not asked this question before, but seeing as how often that is a response among people that I would consider good communicators, do you think it's something that all of us always need to improve? Or do you think there's a gap in expectation of where someone is versus where they think they are or where they think they should be?
It's kind of a loaded question. I think if you think about you read the book, The Ideal Team Player?
Yeah.
Hungry, humble, smart.
Yeah.
Right? Humble has to do with a heart posture of knowing that I need to be better tomorrow than I am today, and that you never achieve the end goal of leadership, right? Communication is one of those critical skills where I think you don't ever hit the end mark of where there's no room to get better. Because how I communicated 20 years ago when I first started compared to how I communicate now is completely different. I am way more effective now. And I can only imagine as I go farther and I get deeper, it's not, then it doesn't just become, how do I communicate better? How do I teach my team to communicate better? How do I get my leaders at work, with my umbrella, under my umbrella of control to communicate better to the front line? And then have that communication come back up, because if you can get it going in both directions and the story is the same, that's the end goal, right? So I think it's just a lifetime process, and I think there's some regression that happens as well. Like for me, I could be going through something difficult where it makes me shorter in my communication, to where I'm coming across maybe in a negative way that's not intended, but it's just my delivery in the moment because of where I am. And I have to hopefully have a marker that's like, or somebody you trust that can have those difficult conversations with you, because that's the hard part. When you're on top, nobody wants to tell you the truth of where you're failing. And hopefully you have that team around you that can say, hey, have you heard how you're actually coming across to some of these people?
Well, I think part of this equation too is the fact that communication is such a big word that includes so many skills,
right?
Because there is active listening, there is empathy, there is assuming positive intent, there is clarity of message, there is conciseness of message, there's consistency and repetition. Those are just a few things. There's so many aspects to the word communication.
Body language. I give this example. I'm an introvert, and so I think internally. I don't think openly. And a lot of times if I'm walking around a facility and it's a fast-paced day, I'm thinking, what's going to go wrong next? What do I need to anticipate that's going to happen next? And so just me walking and in thought, if I'm not conscious of my countenance on my face, I can come across as mean or unapproachable. And so I personally have to be intentional about the countenance and how I have an intentional smile. Like you'll see it if I walk in, I'm in that zone, and then I see a guest, I snap out of it and I smile while approaching, right? But if that doesn't happen, I could be interpreted in a way that I don't want to be interpreted.
So you say the same thing with different words. Resting dick face.
There you go.
I have resting dick face, and it's something that I have to work on. And sometimes I look like I'm upset or angry. It's just I'm in thought and I'm just thinking about something. And so when we think about, we're currently sitting at IAPA Expo, it's a trade show with thousands and thousands of people coming by the booth. I have to be very conscious around what my face looks like and the smile that I have, and just the way that I need to be more approachable. It's not because I'm in a bad mood, but I know just based upon my natural face look that at times it can be a little bit off-putting maybe.
But how many levels of self-awareness have you needed to get to the point where focusing on the fine-tuning of being aware of your countenance matters and you do something about it? And so that's just another, I guess, testimony to your growth in layers as you go. And so we're always harder. If you truly care about leadership, you're way harder on yourself than everybody else is. And sometimes, you heard me talk about, giving somebody grace because we've needed it in the past. We need to give ourselves grace sometimes, because it's an understanding that perfection is not attainable. It's a valiant effort to desire perfection. And we operate within the self-desired excellence. We want to be excellent in everything we do, but understanding it's not possible. And so if we beat ourselves over something like that, we could then get caught in our own heads and not be focusing on the other growth things that we could be doing.
That's something that I've improved a lot in myself, is being able to not be as hard on myself when I make a mistake or something goes wrong. Early on in my career, any mistake would be devastating to me, and I would think about it nonstop, and I would mentally whip myself, right? And it was I wanted to be perfect in everything I did. And then as I've grown and learned in self-awareness and all the things, I still have a desire to be better than I was before. I have a desire to be the best version of me, but I also hold those reins more loosely, because I've learned that when I grit my teeth and hold it, that whole feeling about life is I may be able to have my output be slightly better, but I'm miserable along the way. So there is this rhythm between understanding where we are and the areas that we need to improve, and also being grateful for how far we've come and enjoy the damn ride.
I will be the first to say that I can teach this all day long, but I'm a complete hypocrite. And it's really easy for me to tell you need to have grace with yourself. And it's something new, and in my faith is helping me with it. It's something new in my faith that's bringing me to a spot to actually participate in that in a way. And it's just powerful. I mean, it takes so much pressure off. You can start to understand that really weird foreign concept of peace. I'm starting to feel some of that, and understanding that everything is life's a roller coaster. And sometimes the things that we're doing, we act like it's the end of the world. It's not, right? What we do matters, but I think sometimes we put on a pedestal the importance of what we do as if, the world's going to fall apart tomorrow if we screw this one big at.
And it's been proven time and time again that that's not the case.
Right.
I am loving this conversation. I feel like we could talk for hours and hours, but I want to be respectful of your time. So this is how I want to wrap up my final question for you. Do you have one, for the listeners on this podcast, a recommended action that they can take today, starting right now, for them to become a better leader, for them to grow in their own leadership skills? What is one recommended action they can take away and start doing today?
So I'll say for a young person, or young leader. Well, first, I want to clarify this.
Okay.
There's a lot of people who say, I'm not a leader, right? I'll never be a leader. I can't be a leader. Everybody is a leader in some way. I give the example of, let's say that last month you were hired and you're the newest person on the team. This month, somebody else gets hired. Now they're the new person on their team. You're going to have influence over that person of, hey, this is how we do things around here, blah, blah, blah. That's a form of leadership. You're a sibling. You have a form of leadership in some way. So it's not this like monstrosity of a concept that people are afraid. It shouldn't be something that people are afraid of. So at the end of the day, leadership is a skill, and there's different. You may be here when you think you need to be here, but it's just a progress. And so for a young leader, I would suggest to read the 5 levels of leadership to get the understanding of why people will follow you, and the different reasons why people will follow you, and then assess yourself. And this is for everybody else. Assess yourself on where am I at on that level. Am I at a level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? I want to be at a 5 all the time. And I think sometimes if you're in a new organization or new circumstances, you kind of drop back down. Or if let's say you acquire a facility and you were a 5 in one place, and now you're new to everybody else, even though you're the top leader, you drop down to that. You're the leader because you're the boss. Like your position puts you in that space. And so assess yourself, and then set goals, and then read. Like I require my leadership teams to read. It's the only way you're going to think about it and have intention behind it. And if you have to take, some people use the excuse that I don't like to read. I only listen to podcasts. That's another aversion. But I think there's a good discipline in reading as well. So for everybody else, I'd say just keep going and have grace on yourself, and feed the desire to want to be better tomorrow than you are today.
Well, I think you helped a lot of people be better tomorrow than they are today. So thank you for joining us on the show.
Thank you.
And thank you all for listening. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to subscribe and share this episode with a friend that you think would enjoy it. Go out there, take action in your business, and become the leader that your team needs you to be.